Got video.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up? Hey,
Hey, sir, how you doing?
good to see you after quite a couple years here, huh?
It's been about what, 4 years, 3 years, maybe?
Yeah. So, I've seen you're doing photography, podcasting. What else are you up to?
I'm a car salesman now.
Oh, okay. All right.
I work at Clarion Ford.
For Fords.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Where are you stationed right now, sir?
I am actually in Pennsylvania as well, in Carlisle, uh,
Okay.
out in the center. But yeah, I haven't got to make it out to Western PA this time. Is there
That's
still
where,
up in Clarion?
what was that?
Still snow up there in Clarion?
Today it snowed this morning, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
surprising.
Carlisle is where Waters live. I don't know if you remember Waters.
Yeah, I remember that. Right. His dad retired out of the army, right? And
Yes.
yeah,
So, how many years have you been in the military?
22 years now.
22.
Mhm.
What age did you go? Did you go in at 18?
No, 22 after college, did ROTC, right? Are you
And
still
you've
doing the
been,
guard?
no, I'm not.
No, okay. That's good. So it
Did you?
sounds like you got your hands full with a lot of other jobs, though.
Yeah, I'm just living my life, sir. Now,
That's good.
did you go to Ranger School right out of college?
I did. Yep. So it was, the basic leader course for armor, and then I went right down to Fort Benning for Ranger School, and then off to my first assignment. So
How
crazy.
was the Ranger School experience for you?
Um, so when I look back on that one, it was probably the most formative of my Army experience so far. There've been lots of developmental experiences at the right point and the right time, but that one set like such a foundation because it pushes you to a limit, right, where you know yourself and you know your limits, and you know that you can push through some limits, and you know where other things are. So that taught me a lot internally, and it taught me a lot about what happens to people when they're under stress that I've been able to use, to help teams get better and better along the way.
When did you realize that Ranger School was hard? At one point in Ranger School, did you realize it was hard?
Oh boy, that's a great question. It was so the thought of going felt like a gorilla on my back for a long time, and to finally get there, it was like some of the pressure was actually lifted off, right? Because you're now I'm doing it, and you're just responding to the moment and whatever. Um, but what really got me was lack of sleep, and there was one field exercise where our platoon was doing not so well, and we got maybe like 3 hours of sleep in a whole week or something like that. Um,
Wow.
and what I saw people do. So here's when I knew it was hard. There was a night that we were walking in the woods, and a guy in front of me literally sleepwalked off of the trail and down a hill, right? And then like woke up when he ran into a bush. And I was like, oh my gosh, the guy, like he literally was moving his body while he was asleep. And then I'm like, how can this be? And not probably 20 steps later, it happened to me. Like I hit a tree and woke up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was sleepwalking. Right. So that was one of the moments that was pretty hard, or when I knew it was hard. Good question.
You guys, I hear that you get like an average of 3 hours a night. Did you get, what was the most sleep you got at Ranger School?
Well, it's very controlled for the environment. When there are high risk things, right, you do get a lot of sleep, and they'll make sure that your body and your mind is ready to do those things. Um, when they want to simulate, right, a combat scenario and put extra stress on you because there's not a real enemy, right, then there are, I mean, 4 or 5 nights that we went without sleep, I can remember.
So you would say you went to Ranger School about 20 years ago, right?
21 years ago.
Would you say that it's gotten any different?
Um, I know the curriculum has changed a little bit, but a lot of our classmates, right, have gone down there recently. I think we've got some some good Clarion kids and some Slippery Rock kids that made it through, now lieutenants out there in the Army, and talking to them. Wyatt Cole, Jacob Fiskus, I don't know if you remember those guys, right? So talking to them about their experiences, it sounded very similar. So I'm glad to see a lot of the fundamentals have just stayed the same. Put you under stressful conditions and let you lead. Let the team work together, and you see how teams can form or fall apart under that stress.
Right. So when was your first deployment?
I was a captain, a troop commander, and that was 2005 to Iraq. So a lot of folks, a lot of my peers had some combat experience already. I was a little bit later in the game because I was at a school, the captain's career course, and then went over there. So yeah, it was 2006 actually, I think it was.
Now you already have a lot of training, but are you still scared going into your first deployment as a captain?
I wouldn't say scared, but I was concerned because I was a troop commander. So we had about 90 folks in the cavalry troop. And I mean, I just wanted to take care of them and, bring them back and accomplish the mission too. So it was kind of funny. I guess a word moment. We'd been in Kuwait for a little bit, and our first trip into Iraq, there's war stories and there's movies and whatever. And I was really thinking like it, plus every training experience up to this point, there's always enemy contact. There's always action. There's always something blowing up, right? Because you have to train for it. And so that first time when we drove across the border, I was totally expecting all that to happen like all at once. And the funny thing is it didn't, right? Because that's not how it is. It's how we train for a worst case scenario, but it was actually pretty calm, and we drove for a long time, and in fact days, and didn't really have any enemy contact. And I was like, oh well, wait a minute, it's not all so intense.
So it's not intense. Did you say how much % of the time is it intense versus not intense combat deployment?
I mean, so much depends on what kind of job someone's doing out there. There were some organizations that lived in small outposts that probably received some kind of enemy contact or took it to the enemy every single day. There are some larger supply bases and things like that received less. For a particular cavalry troop that year, it was maybe 10% of the time we were in. The enemy by that point, they were cowards, right? They were hiding, and they were hitting us asymmetrically with rockets and roadside bombs and things like that, right? So we didn't get to really meet them face to face.
Okay. Now, were you a part of the Ranger Battalion?
No, I've never served with the regiment. So as an armor officer, I got lucky to go to Ranger School to get the leadership experience out of it, but I've never had the opportunity to serve in the 75th Regiment.
Right. So did you always want to go into the combat arms as a kid growing up?
Yes, there was a big calling in that. Where my father had served in the National Guard in Ohio, so I'd seen military service. A lot of my family, I'd seen the benefits, and of course just the patriotism of wearing the uniform for the country. But then it was in college when I was in the Reserve Officer Training Corps that some of my peers before me and some of the older kids who graduated. They talked about their experiences in the Armor Corps and in the infantry, and those kind of drew me in. So it was really what the stories that they told about working with people and being on that kind of organization that drew me to it.
Did you also play sports throughout high school?
I did, yeah. So
what sports?
So I played soccer. That's probably nowhere near as good as you. But did that one and ran track most of the time, and then we'll have the intramurals.
Yeah, I noticed that when you were here, you're still one of the most in shape ones, I guess I would say. Even did you always take pride in that, like keeping up with the young ones?
So yeah, you guys are tough. When you were a cadet and when your peers were out there, I had to put in extra percentage points, man, to put it out there on the field and hang with you guys. And you probably didn't see like the ibuprofen that I had to take after a good workout or whatever. Right? But there is an aspect of leadership that it's a physical job, and so I think you can earn respect from your peers and subordinates by being in good shape. And then when you've got that respect, I think then they also listen to other guidance a little bit better, right? And it helps coalesce the team.
Was there a point when you became an officer when you started to notice you're gaining respect?
That's a great question too. So teams take a long time to form, right? I'm sure some of the other podcasts that you talk to people about, but there is a sweet spot, right? When things are humming in an organization, and it takes repetitions of doing what you need to do, right? Practice, practice, practice. When I was a lieutenant tank platoon leader, I was lucky. I got to be in that organization for almost a year and a half with the same 15 folks, minus a few that came and went. But after maybe like the second or third time that we went out to the field and did training together on our tanks, we could kind of feel how each other thought, right? And then the team was really coming together. You knew that Red 2 would have Red 1's back, right, so to speak, when we were out there operating together.
Now, not everyone has like those natural leadership attributes, but like some people aspire to be leaders. What do you say to those people that kind of don't have the respect but want it?
Boy, was it Shakespeare that said, right, not all people are born leaders, or maybe not all are born great, but some strive to achieve it. Yeah, so I think you can work hard at leadership skills. I also think there are some people that have innate abilities, but they still have to work as well. So for someone who's aspiring, for leadership, whether it's in a corporate America or in the military or on a sports organization or whatever, right? There are here comes the 2-year-old. Sorry. There are things that there's a lot of research out there, honestly. And if you read and learn from others' experiences and watch those that you admire and respect, you can pick up a lot of good tidbits in that way. So that's the advice that I would give. Sports coaches out there, a great example. Corporate America has some CEOs, right? Jack Welch stands out, things like that, right? They've thought about it, they've published, they've learned from their experiences, and they pass it along to others.
Where do you find yourself learning? Like some people learn through reading, some through podcasts, some in person. Where do you find yourself still learning until this day?
Okay, so great. So in the military, they've kind of broken learning into 3 spheres, right? There's what they call the institutional domain. So there's formal schools that leaders go to learn new skills, technical, tactical, or interpersonal. There is the self-development domain, right? Because one should always be preparing, reading, watching movies is actually a good way too, right? And then you bring up podcasts, social media nowadays. There's a thing called Mill Twitter, right? That like people tweet out recommendations and ideas. You can follow leaders and see what they're saying, things like that. And then last and the biggest, most significant one is what the Army calls the operational domain. And that's all of your life experiences or your Army experiences, your training, combat deployments, rotations to training centers, big field exercises like that, or just the kind of the daily, garrison operations and working with your own chain of command and your peers around you to, do an event, do an after action review, peel it back, see what went well, what didn't. When you're working with subordinates or your leaders, right, ask specific skills. How was my performance in this case? All right, what could I do better? Things like that. And that's a big chunk of the learning out there, is just getting repetitions through experience.
Yeah, like you say, learning from subordinates. You found yourself working with a university, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're working with young men and women who are making mistakes. Mm-hmm. How do you go about talking to them when they want to become leaders? Like you probably made mistakes in the RTC too. as in like outside and inside the program? How do you go about sort of putting them in the right direction to become a leader?
Yeah. Okay. So a great thing about the ROTC experience is that the Army also taught us how to be teachers. I mean, not certified or by any means like that, but so I feel that as a leader, you also have to be a good teacher too. And so in those experiences, we set conditions. We made training events and things like that where people could. We were still in a controlled environment, but they could make mistakes, right? And then we could talk about that still with in a safe spot where those risks uh, didn't have any other serious consequences except for the learning value out of it, right? So, I think up to clearing. What was that awesome hill called down by the river?
Toby Hill.
Yeah, right. So like those beautiful woods. I mean, year after year after year, right? The students would go there and probably make the same mistakes because that's at the place in their development. Um, the great thing about the program is that then when you walk back up to the top of the hill, right, and we get to think about it and get to talk about it, and then those mistakes then become a life experience that will probably never be repeated or um, when it really matters, right? They're going to think back to that opportunity in the woods or that lesson that they got after that particular event.
Yeah. I feel like to some people, it's important to have that older leadership around, even when they make mistakes. Say if some 20-year-old gets in trouble in college and you come up and talk to them,
Yeah.
do you, how do you feel like that's one of the most important parts?
Yeah, there was a lot of life learning in college too. I think. I mean, it's a very transformative time in someone's development, and so in addition to just the training events, right, we had a lot of scenario or a lot of opportunities um, to do counseling with small groups, right, and so I think the neat thing about ROTC is you had student peer mentors who were a little bit older. We had hold on a second. Home. These are now gold, right? Like everybody's on those things all day long. Um, anyways, but so back to ROTC, what we had is, I think the most powerful part of that program was the peer mentorship, where older upperclassmen were teamed with lower classmen uh, because they literally paved the path, a year or two ahead of them, and they could share things that way. And then we had the cadre, folks have been in the Army for 10, 15 years or whatever, paired with about 25 or whatever classmates, um, and a different cadre member every year, right? What Master Vandergrift could teach you all, what Rogo could teach people, right? I mean, they lived a lot of life and could give back through their own experiences that way. So I mean, there were a lot of levels I remember in ROTC that was good to help people develop.
I realize that having older people around is very important. Because I look back at younger Ashby even 3 years ago, and I shake my head and I regret it sometimes. But now all I can do is pour into the younger ones.
Right.
And I feel like that's the most important. What would you say is the most important thing as a leader to build a leader?
Hmm. Um, to build a leader, I think it takes development. So the Army has some attributes and competencies that we seek in our leaders. Uh, like presence, can they achieve success? One of those is developed, and we all realize. I mean, I'm at 22 years, right? This the end could be the retirement could be around the corner a lot pretty soon here. However, the Army will keep rolling along, and our country will keep going along, and giving back to the younger members of the organization. How do you make that leader? I think senior leaders got to invest in them.
Right. Now, you say retirement's near. So, say if you were to retire tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
looking back at your career, what's the number one thing you said you would be most proud of in your personal career?
Number one thing, you got to limit me to one, huh?
You can pick a couple. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the cavalry troop that I talked about before, we brought everybody home from that tour, safe and sound, uh, and a lot of those guys are still in touch as a small group today. Um, when the plane landed on that one, that was an exciting. I mean, that was pretty formative time. Second, we had a trip to Afghanistan. We closed down a lot of provinces. I was much more senior. Had an infantry battalion from actually the Band of Brothers Battalion, 2nd Battalion of the 506 Curry, and we closed down a couple of provinces, handed over to the Afghan forces who were doing well, and brought home 851 infantrymen, air assault infantrymen, and we had ladies on that team too. That was extremely rewarding. Um, I will say though, I mean, not to be too glorious, but the time up in Slippery Rock and Clarion, right, hanging out with the Eagles and the Rock students. I mean, um, young men and women from Western Pennsylvania, right, or Baltimore in your case, but now I think now you're a Western PA native. Um, uh, great patriots with just good inherent skills, and working with y'all was actually super rewarding too. I missed that time up there. I regret that it was so short.
Was that your only time working with college students or college officers or ROTC? That's what I meant.
Yeah, right. I only have one experience with ROTC. Otherwise, I've been working with active duty
Are
soldiers
you
mostly.
are you only allowed one?
No, some people can have repeat tours. Yeah.
Okay. So when you left ROTC, where did you go?
So after that, I became a squadron commander down at Fort Benning for a training unit. So it was neat because it was still the school environment. We had all the cavalry school courses. The master gunners school was down there. Um, Great experience. So young leaders, lieutenants, sergeants would come through those courses to get some functional skills that they would take back to their units to make their units more lethal. So it was fun to see them learn.
Right. So there's lieutenant colonel and there's full-bird colonel.
Mm-hmm.
You're full-bird colonel?
I am a lieutenant colonel
Lieutenant
at this point. I actually get promoted here on the 1st of May. So that's pretty humbling and pretty amazing that after all this time serving the country to wear a new rank and be serving at the senior level is going to be pretty exciting.
Is there sort of a what would you say sort of the difference is between lieutenant colonel and full-bird colonel for those who don't understand the rankings too well?
Okay. So lieutenant colonels, they they run organizations the size of a battalion or squadron. So maybe 3 to 900, under 1,000 people in those organizations. There you can still apply a lot of good direct leadership, hands-on time with that kind of organization. Colonels, so colonels, full colonels run the army, right? So generals make decisions, but behind the scenes, colonels are doing all the staff work. They're setting the conditions. They're resourcing things that need to get done across the whole military, across the whole enterprise. And when colonels get to be leaders, they lead brigade-size organizations to the tune of maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people in those organizations. And there's a big switch, from organization, almost strategic leader competencies that are applied at that level.
I realize the army sort of gives you new things to do along the way. Do you get excited to do new things even 22 years in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the army is great because it's got training touch points along the way. So there's a course or an experience to set you up for the next step, right? So because unique to other organizations, the army doesn't take outside leaders in, right? They grow their own from the ground up. So there's a progression, giving you the schooling and then sending you out there to go do it at the next level.
So are you finding yourself preparing now to be that full-bird colonel?
Yes, in fact, here at the Army War College, there are a bunch of similar schools like this for lieutenant colonels who are about to be colonels or Navy captains. And there's this transition point where we're going to take more senior roles. So they provide us the education that's going to carry us for the next couple of years through those.
So if the opportunity were to come, would you go to general?
Well, I don't know about that. I'll keep serving as long as the Army will let me. It's fun to hang out with soldiers.
Do you enjoy working with privates who are new? I mean, I know you as a lieutenant colonel, you probably don't do it very often, but do you enjoy those experiences if you ever get them?
Oh yeah, of course. So interesting thing about the Armor Corps, right, is right, we work with tanks, and so as a young man, I was kind of really drawn to this equipment, right? I was in 8th grade when Desert Storm kicked off, and there's all the nightly news of tanks and Bradleys rolling across the desert, right? That looks exciting. So then I got the chance. But what I really learned about the Army super early on is that it's not that fancy equipment that makes it cool. It's the people that you work with, right? Doing those things. So right, whether it's junior officers or super young soldiers, I mean, there are soldiers out there nowadays who have I've been in the Army longer than they've been alive, right? That's pretty crazy, right? To think about. So it's great to see their, their life perspective, Generation Z, how they think about things, how motivated they are to serve their country. It really rubs off, and it gives you motivation and inspiration.
Do you notice a difference when you go and talk to maybe like a 17-year-old private because you have so much wisdom to give them? They've only been alive 17 years. You've been in the Army 22 years. I know, like, sort of when a colonel walks up to you, you probably notice that a lot of people get kind of scared. And what do you
Yeah.
notice when you go up to a private and talk to them?
Yeah. As you progress, it is kind of interesting because the rank, right, can scare people, or they have some kind of preconceived notion, right? But the thing about the Army is that we're people business, right? So regardless of what you're wearing, it still is the people on your left and right that matter, and the people within your organization. They're going to pull you together through it. So I mean, I like to just break down a barrier, ask them how they're doing and where they're from, and then great, they'll start telling me about all the exciting things that they love to do in the Army, and then that provides windows to impart some tidbits or some wisdom back at them.
So, what's in the near future for you? I know you're in Carlisle. What exactly are you doing there?
Yeah, so here, the Army War College curriculum, it's about a 10-month course where it's all my peers, lieutenant colonels and colonels, as well as a bunch of international officers. That's exciting that we've got partnerships with about 60 countries that sent fellows here to learn. And we will all go forth back to new units. My next assignment will be in Germany, in Stuttgart, at the United States European Command headquarters. That's the organization that's responsible for 50 countries and a big chunk of the Atlantic Ocean, working closely with our NATO allies over there to keep that section of the world safe and protect the homeland from a forward deployed base out there. And so that's a 2-year assignment, and then after that, I've been lucky to pick up for a brigade command assignment. I don't know where that will be or when exactly that'll be, but pretty excited about opportunity to lead another organization.
Germany, that's where they station a lot of the special forces guys, right?
And we have a smattering in every combatant command across the world.
Have you sat down and talked with like a Navy SEAL or a special forces guys?
Yeah, I've got to meet some of those guys throughout my career. Yeah, I mean, unique mission and pretty unique folks that do that.
Yeah, because I'm personally super impressed with Navy SEALs. Like I'm a huge fan of SEALs. How different actually are they when you talk to them in person? Because I hear they're just different kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, the couple that I've met super patriots, but also incredibly competent. I think one thing that sets those elite organizations apart is that they get so many reps doing what they do. So we talked about practice before, right? They practice and practice and practice until they are all in each other's minds when they conduct an operation.
That's awesome. So in your position right now where you're at, you get more of a say of where you go. Say going to Germany, how much of a say did you have in that? Did you?
Yeah, it's a good thing you asked, right? So if you remember, the seniors when they graduated, they got to put in a preference sheet and then top 10 list, so to speak, and then the Army would see where the holes are and then fill them all in and try to get people with preference. So there's a new thing literally in the last 2 years within the Army called the talent management alignment process, where it's very similar, I guess, to a corporate world. All of the job openings are posted for all the people who are scheduled to move that year, and you can actually apply for a position. And then organizations will do interviews to find folks who might have a special talent that best fits that organization. It's a fairly new process that yes, you do have a say in where you're going nowadays.
Yeah, because I was thinking someone like you, if you've earned a lot of respect, I'd say you. Are you? How excited are you to move to Germany for 2 years? Have you ever been there?
I did get to have an experience there before, a couple tours before. It's great. I met my wife over there. She's American, but she was doing a job over there too. We met over there, so she's super excited to get back over there. I've got a bunch of friends that I know who are stationed at Stuttgart. So it's kind of funny. The Army, like you'll be stationed with somebody in your neighborhood, and then 3 years apart or 5 years apart, right? And then your neighbors again. So looking forward to linking up with some people that I haven't seen in a while.
Now, how many deployments have you been on in your career?
Two.
Two.
One Iraq and one.
You said the Iraq one was in 2005.
Yep.
Which was, yeah, I didn't ask. That was right after 9/11. Did that make you nervous?
That was an interesting time. So 9/11 happened. There were some units that went to Afghanistan right away, and I tell you, right, being a soldier, everybody wanted to get in the game as fast as they could, and so every unit and every rotation, I think everybody was itching to contribute and do what they could. Right back then, it was the global war on terrorism that spread pretty quickly, and we wanted to nip that in the bud. And I think everybody wanted to help squash that organization that did such terrible things in New York. So I say that because it was about 4 years after 9/11 before I got to finally have a deployment, and there was I say finally because that was the feeling that everybody had back then. When do I get to? When is coach going to put me in? Right.
Right. So that's how you felt. You felt sort of fired up after, like this is what I'm here for.
Right. Yeah.
That's nerve-wracking. Mm-hmm. But all right, Colonel Barta, I think that's all I have for you today, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Good luck with all those endeavors, and looking forward to hearing more of your shows.
Thank you. You too, and congrats on the promotion.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Right. Ashby.
Yep.